Yo, what is up, Selkey? So we're going to go ahead. We're going to have a bit of a chat over here with one of the newer TCs, one of the newer CCs, really focusing on sweaty rotations and optimal play in the Wuthering Waves space. I've got Selkey's YouTube channel over here. Please make sure to give that a like and subscribe if you're free. They're going in. They're getting really technical. They're doing guide content. They're finding out new tech like Jinxie's jump cancels. And I think they're really providing a great benefit to the space as a whole, helping to upskill players, doing things like beginner guides, and, making this game a lot more accessible for people. So with that, I've done a brief intro. Selkey, if you want to talk a little bit about yourself before we dive on into the meat of the topic, let's go for it.
I'm Selkey. I have been playing Wuthering Waves since 1.0. At first, I didn't actually play much Wuthering Waves because in 1.0, my PC was not very good at running Wuthering Waves, but then after like a week or two, I came back because they gave out a free 5-star. And then after trying the game a little bit more, I really fell in love with it. I really love the combat. I think, unironically, Wuthering Waves has the best combat out of any game ever, in fact. Truly, ever. I've played a ton of games, a lot of action combat games. I still think Wuthering Waves is unmatched in terms of combat, and that's why I pretty much dedicated my passion to finding out all the technologies, all the play styles, and all the optimal ways to play characters, because I truly enjoy playing this game. I truly enjoy finding out what I can do better to maximize my rotations, to do more damage, and so on and so forth. And I want to show other people that they can do that too if they put in the effort. And that's pretty much the purpose of my channel. I really enjoy doing that.
Gotcha. So one of the main purposes is just going ahead, getting people a lot more upskilled, getting them to learn what you figured out or what you've mastered, so that everyone can level up as a whole. Awesome stuff. And I think I just wanted to hit on one thing you said, which I think is a bit of a hot take, and I think a lot of people are going to agree it might be a bit of a hot take. WuWa has the best combat ever. I mean, I think a lot of people, when they think about combat, right, especially with a declarative statement like that, they're going to be thinking about things like, DMC, maybe a bit of God of War, maybe even a little bit of Monster Hunter, too, and stuff like that, right? What makes it so much better than everything else?
In my opinion, what makes it so much better is actually the true skill ceiling of the game. Because I've played a ton of games. I've played Invictus, I've played Monster Hunter since Freedom Unite, which is ages ago on the PlayStation Portable. I've played Devil May Cry. I've played so many different PvP games, League of Legends, Blade and Soul, whatever. Like, there are so many I could name. What, in my opinion, makes Wuthering Waves so much better is, first of all, it is extremely fast. So in Monster Hunter, I've watched a ton of Monster Hunter speedruns and gameplay. There is only so much you can do because the speed of the monster, the speed of the enemy you're engaging with, is locking you down to how much you can do in the fight, pretty much. And the speed of, well, your own weapon, let's say, dual blades or greatsword or longsword. You're locked to what the game pretty much tells you you can do. But in Wuthering Waves, the actual skill ceiling is so unbelievably high. So if you watch some of the best players like Yuumi, Ceres, Sidewinder, and a lot of other people, Eugen, amazing Spectre Rover player, if you watch them, you will see, oh my god, I can't even see what is going on. And this high skill ceiling is so amazing for me to watch, and which is why I want to explain to other people how they can do that too with a lot of practice, and if they dedicate themselves to learning it.
Gotcha. So there's a lot of players. I think Yumi's one that comes to mind. I don't feel like Yuumi does a lot of guide content, right? I've seen a couple of their clears. Like you said, it's almost impossible to see whatever the fuck is going on in their rotations. I'm sometimes just looking at, like, their character icons on the side just to see who has a swap cooldown on them, to notice, like, what they're actually doing. This is some of, like, the shit that they're doing. You kind of have no idea what's going on. You have absolutely no clue what's going on. And so I don't think that creators like this typically do a lot of, like, guide or tutorial content on how to play like them. They kind of just play like this and then go from there.
So the thing about Yuumi is I'm actually friends with Yuumi myself, and we talk, well, fairly frequently. And Yuumi himself said that he really enjoys playing the game, but he had no greater interest in making guide content, which is why he's just sticking to speedrunning. And obviously, he's an amazing speedrunner. He actually broke the world record last patch with Phoebe. So that was truly amazing. But he doesn't want to do the guide part of his videos. So I, and Maggie obviously as well, who is more on the math side of things, pretty much covered the entirety of high-level WuWa gameplay. That people, if people are interested in getting to know high-level WuWa, they can go to me and Maggie to find out how to build characters, and then from me how to play them.
Gotcha. Well, I think that, like when I think about it, yeah, I wouldn't limit yourself too much in the space. I think you have a clear understanding of like what goes into like building and stuff. And let's be real here, right? For a lot of players, the building and the gearing part isn't going to be that crazy. Right? You don't need skill or you don't need practice to roll echoes, right? And make sure that the echoes are like good. You just need to know what substats you need, what a 4 out of 5 or a 3 out of 5 looks like for the character, and then just grind, right? Until you get them. So I would view the service that you're providing or the content that you're providing as like a little bit more necessary or actually like more practical for a lot of players, because that's sort of like live demonstration of how to do this tech, of how to do these combos, how to do these rotations is, in my eyes, a bit more of like a value add than just figuring out, right? Oh, what's the most optimal combination of substats that I'm going to need to do the most damage, right? Or like, which substat is better than this one? The rotations, I feel like, are a lot more valuable than, you know, your forte going from 58k, it's like on my screen, to like 60k. But that's just like my personal view on it. And so I was going to say that my suggestion for your content is, you know, maybe weaving a little bit more of like that build stuff in, but just making it, you know, like super short, super easy. You know, here's what a typical 3 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 piece is going to look like for the character. Try to get as many of these as possible. And then, you know, get into your rotational stuff for a bit more of like a comprehensive thing. But yeah, thanks for the introduction. Thanks for the background. Let's actually get into the meat of why we're calling today. I don't know why this feels like so official. Maybe I like got off on like, maybe I started this off on the wrong foot because I thought this was just supposed to be a casual chat about Brant. But now I feel like we're just learning about like who, like everything about you. I don't think that's a problem though. But the topic of today is Brant and his kit. And I think the idea, right, based off of the video that you've made, just how damn good he is. So is there anything that you wanted to get off your chest, like at the start, to kind of like frame the discussion? I've been going in with the viewpoint, right, that Brant almost feels a little bit too good in some ways and does kind of a little bit too much relative to some other characters on the roster.
I actually played Brant a lot in my first stream, and my first reaction to Brant was that I was really lucky because I actually got his S1 as well with on top of his signature. So my perception of Brant was slightly biased by the fact that I have a sequence as well while trying him out, which greatly also helps his reliability.
Absolutely.
However, on my stream, I was rather, well, downtrodden, I guess, about his performance because I couldn't quite figure out how to make him like get to the next level of play, because I play most of the characters at a very high level, and when I'm playing them at a high level, I usually look for what I can do more, what I can do better, and it took me a while to realize just how much effort it takes to elevate Brant to that next level, just like Changli in a sense. And after trying him, I literally played him for like unironically 16 hours straight. I realized eventually, holy shit, this character is fucking cracked. Like, Jesus Christ, this character is so good because his rotations are really hard, but he is a keystone for pretty much enabling every single team in the entire game because he does everything. He unironically does everything. Like I already said in my video, he does healing, shielding, buffing, damage. Like he's midair, he's on the ground. Like he does everything, like really everything. So the only thing like I have now to say is like I really love Brant. I think he's extremely fun. I think he's extremely strong. However, I think that getting him to that true like high-end potential takes a lot of effort. But the nice thing about Brant is, unlike Changli, a lot of like new players, a lot of casual players, they can access his relatively high level of potential, you know, his good damage output with Sanhua, with a relatively easy rotation, really simply. Like the Sana comp is really easy, the Changli comp is really easy if you don't make it complicated. He's great, I think. There are some thoughts I have regarding him, criticisms, partly of his design, partly regarding how Kuro wants to advertise characters and how to monetize them. But yeah, we can talk about it if you have any questions.
Yeah. No, I think the viewpoint that you have, right, that it did take you a while to reach that next level of performance on him, but now that he's able to reach that next level, you know, maybe he warrants an expert tag on Pride Win. maybe an expert +2, he can go to tier 0 as well if he is, pretty well invested and then is also, played at the sweatiest level. I think you mentioned 2 Fortes in one rotation in a quick swap. I feel like that's kind of like the ceiling that you're talking about. It takes a while to get there. I'm glad that that's there. I'm glad that you're able to reach that pinnacle if you are investing the time. And I also did want to address the other huge benefit to Brant, right? He has that higher end, higher spec gameplay where you're sweating like crazy. But to reach good level, a decent level of performance on him, you don't need to do anything crazy, right? This isn't like a Changli situation where like the character's floor is, let's be honest here, Changli's floor for potential performance is really pretty low. If you're, just playing her in something like Hyper Carry, playing her with a sub DPS like maybe a Yang or a Sanhua, and just like making her the main damage dealer, that ceiling is pretty low, right? Or not the ceiling, absolutely. The floor is pretty low, and the ceiling is pretty low too.
The skill floor.
Yeah.
Exactly. So surprisingly, you can literally just play Brant. You intro into him, hold left mouse button. Like okay, you use Liberation, and then you hold left mouse button. And then you just wait till his forte is full, press E, done. Like,
exactly.
He might actually be one of the easiest characters to play. And on top of that, his mid-air moveset, it's a bit inconsistent. But if you don't get really unlucky, you can pretty much ignore dodge patterns. You don't have to dodge most attacks. So
yeah, he'll do these wide swinging things, and you end up in a situation where the only attacks that will typically hit you will be like the massive AoE ones. I will say though, I'm a little bit scared of how he's going to perform against Scar. I do think he's going to have massive problems against Scar because we all know how Scar works, especially in his goat form, right? Where he's like he does the biggest swings. They have like an after effect. They have like an after slash detonation. He has that on a couple of his attacks. He's got like that massive one where he like, shoves the sword into the ground and then blows it up. I feel like Scar is going to be one of Brant's biggest nightmares. But that's just my prediction this early on. I do think Scar is gonna ruin Brant a little bit, unless you're really practicing your air dodges.
Yeah. So funnily enough, I actually played a little bit of holograms of Brant against, I think, Sentry Construct, was it? I got destroyed.
He is
like Sentry Construct has these like huge moves where he just hits pretty much like everywhere. I got completely destroyed. I will not lie. It was quite an experience.
Absolutely. I think that Brant is a bit of a. I think that in a team he's good for holograms, but solo he can get a little bit rough because let's be honest here, air dodges are way more difficult than ground dodges. It almost seems like the timing is like a lot more strict. You have to like perfect frame like dodge the attack if you want to have like any chance of it, and if you're too early or you're too late, you're gonna get hit. It seems like he's a very like higher risk sort of playstyle and that sort of content, but in the TOA where you can just muscle off hits, like your shield will tank at least like 2 hits from the boss, you're good, right, to just kind of do whatever you want. But I can definitely agree that holograms are both a blessing and a curse for him, where, it's good if you can just damage, the holo without taking any because you're dodging the attacks, but if you're, if you do get hit, you're like dead. Really rough. I spent about 5 hours against Hikari trying to solo it, and I got nowhere.
Yeah, it's really tough.
It's a rough one. So we talked about how the character is cracked. You spent a lot of time learning him. I spent a lot of time learning him. Do we think that he does maybe a little bit too much? I personally think he does, primarily because of one mechanic. His outro skill. His outro skill is literally 14 seconds long. It's the same duration, right, as a premium sub DPS like Rosia, or a premium sub DPS like a Yinlin, or even a Jeja. But it's also fair to say that Brant does way more damage than these characters, might demand a little bit more field time, but he can also be played hyper carry. And so my question is it healthy or is it good for him to have an outro skill that's at the same level as those other characters we kind of just mentioned? Is that something that's good for the game? Is that something that maybe we should be like looking out for? Because I do believe he makes a lot of those characters like Changli or like Lumi that are fulfilling a similar role that he is on the battlefield. They have a 10-second outro skill, right? That's a significant duration drop going from 14 to 10. It almost feels like Brant has too much, right?
In my opinion, the outro is, well, where I personally would say that it's not like the main selling point of the character, because his strongest part is actually his personal damage.
Yeah.
As I've already said before, his personal damage is truly unprecedented. He just does the most damage out of all sub DPS characters in the entire game. And because of how his kit works and how good it is for quick swapping, you can constantly weave in his damage without any repercussions. And because his damage is not tied to a cooldown, it's truly unbound by any cooldown. It is so amazing. Like his character, if you master him, if you constantly weave in every single swap with like 2 of his mid-air auto attacks, he does so much damage, unbelievably much damage. And his outro, and I actually personally felt this a lot, and even some of my friends agree with this, his outro, despite being such a huge multiplier, in fact, if you completely ignore using the outro and just keep weaving in more attacks with Brant, actually, his damage almost completely makes up for the lost damage of the outro, which is crazy. Like, that is actually crazy. That's partly also because Changli is the way Changli is.
Because Changli doesn't do that much damage to amplify in the first place.
Changli doesn't do that much damage. And it's
ladies
also
and gentlemen, we have another content creator in the space, another TC in the space, confirming again that Changli kind of doesn't do that much. I'm sorry, you're about to get canceled, buddy. Selkey, once this is uploaded, it's ogre for you, buddy. You're getting canceled.
Yeah.
The Changli mains are about to crucify you, man. It's over.
Oh, shit.
But
Yeah,
it's true.
it's over.
It's entirely. This is the thing, guys. Changli's damage is not the highest, but because it's not the highest, it's kind of somewhat a benefit for her because she's not as dependent on outro skills because there's not much to amplify in the first place. And so I think the point that Selkey's bringing up, right, is that you can kind of just swap off of Changli immediately. This outro skill will disappear because, of course, you lose it on swap, but Brant does so much personal damage and so much contribution in the team that he can make up for this lack of amplification on Changli. I think you're entirely right, and I think that's a different mindset to what I've been having as I've approached Brant's rotations, in that I'm trying to like line up Brant's outro skill so that it's available for Changli's like liberation into the second forte, right? Like that's at least the one thing that I try to do in the kit, and then I don't really care that much after that. Where the outro skill goes.
So the nice thing, and which is why I really like Brant's design, is in my I had a should you pull Changli video, and I made it very clear that I don't think Changli is a very casual friendly character.
Absolutely.
You put in a lot of time, and in fact, like one of the things that pretty much like 90% of the player base probably doesn't know is that you can actually stay on ground with Changli's skill on your swap if you're just fast enough.
If
it's
you
like
swap directly at the start, right? It's just like E and then immediate. Yeah, I've done it a couple of times. It's very tight timing.
It's very hard. Probably, I don't even know how possible it is on phone, to be honest. I know people can do it on phone.
Have 3 hands.
But I assume very few people. Yeah, it's very hard. But the nice thing about Brant, and that's why I really like the outro, is the outro gives you an option to play the character at an easier level. At a way easier level while retaining a lot of the value that the character has. Because of Changli, you don't really have that option because the concerto is so slow. Like, it's really slow. But Brant's concerto is incredibly fast for the damage he also outputs while doing it as a sub DPS.
Yeah, and I guess this is the thing. I guess now that we're going back into it, we've talked about how much Brant doesn't really need his outro skill because of how fast his concerto is. He might be able to even get it twice in a rotation. His personal damage is so high, he can make up for canceling the outro skill early. Aren't these all kind of just like arguments for 14 seconds being a little bit overtuned? Because I'm going to be honest, with the way that you've been describing it, it seems like Brant would have had perfectly fine performance just with a 10-second one.
I actually agree that he would be completely fine with 10 seconds. The 14 seconds, in my personal opinion, is completely optional. I personally don't really know a character that truly needs 14 seconds, unless you truly assume that with Changli, you literally go in with 2 full cooldowns, do even an echo in between, and use literally everything in her kit.
I would say Carlotta really likes having 14 seconds, right? Because you can 100% use her with a character like Lumi, right? Where you maybe do Carlotta's forte and her skill prior to going on to Carlotta, and then you just, the second you get on Carlotta, maybe you like forte and liberation, something along those lines. But you're losing a lot of the damage amp, right? On Carlotta's whole rotation, she has the 2 skill casts that she does. You're losing the damage amp on that if you're playing Lumi with her. So it's like it feels suboptimal. So I would say Carlotta, especially in our hypercarry setup, is kind of like a full 14-second user. I might be wrong though.
You're actually right about that. If we kind of assume like a casual level player that just, presses the skill once to get her stacks and then comes back to Carlotta later and then actually does her skill, her forte, and then the full liberation with another skill potentially. If we assume all these skills together, then yeah, we could probably reach like a 14-second window. So yeah, it is actually quite good that it's 14 seconds long. For high-level play, I don't think it matters that much. It could have been even like half of that time and would have been fine. But the nice thing is that Kuro makes characters or new characters more accessible to players that are not interested in, truly min-maxing everything they can do, but actually giving them an easier option. Hey, look, if you want to play Brant Changli at an easier level, just consider the bar to full and then switch to Changli and just press all buttons.
Yep. And then just like, use your 2 stacks. Probably build up 1 stack beforehand. It's like a quick swap, easier way to play it. You don't have to do crazy things to just get a good clear time. And so I guess this is kind of like the next part of the conversation. You talked about it being great that Brant has like this easier way to work. He has these mechanics that are, simplifying the various playstyles. He's got one where he makes like a hyper carry Changli that still clears because of the damage amp, but he's better when he's like quick swapping and, you're only using the outro buff for like one of Changli's abilities, or maybe 2. Doesn't this almost pose like a bit of an interesting situation where, honestly, should Changli have just had a 14-second outro skill? In your opinion, if you could go back and redo it, would you have given Changli and Lumi a 14-second outro skill?
That's a good question. I don't know how Kuro intends to design 4-star characters, to be honest, because obviously, generally speaking, 4-star characters are supposed to be weaker than 5-star characters. Well, if I go by general gacha logic, but that doesn't have to be a rule. It's just what I think when I think of gacha games.
Yeah.
But let's say actually like a 5-star character.
We got
Should a
Changli on
5-star
this.
character have 14 seconds? So I think of Resonance Liberations because it's a Resonance Liberation damage buff that Changli provides. And the question is how the liberation will work. If it's like a really long one, like let's say Zhang Yao, then yes, like having 10 seconds is really damn short. Like if you really want to play like Changli as a buffer for Zhang Liao, then yeah, this will not be sufficient. Could they have just given her 14 seconds? Absolutely. Is there a problem with it? No. Like she could have easily used the outer buff for longer. It wouldn't have made a difference about her viability at all, to be honest. Because I don't think there's actually a single team where you truly want to have Changli off field for an entire 14 seconds, unless I'm wrong. But I personally cannot recall a single team out of my memory.
The viewpoint that I have on it, and I get what you're saying in that, like, I don't think, like, you don't think, like, her hot, or, like, what she has right now would be changed. I think that her having a 14-second outro, I don't think it would increase her strength in her best performing teams, but it would have done a similar thing to what you're saying right now about Brant. It enables a less sweaty, easier to use playstyle where, Brant can be off the field for 14 seconds, right? In like a Carlotta team or even hypothetically a Changli team. And that's an easier way to play it and it works. Imagine, right? If Changli could have taken 14 seconds off field. I know we don't typically want to do that, but then she becomes more of just like a full buffer, right? For the Encore, a full buffer for the Chisha, a full buffer for the Zhang Liao. And that's just a more accessible way for her to work. I feel like in a lot of ways, the Kuro devs, they learned from Changli, they learned from her implementation, and they could have given Brant that 10-second outro, but they instead didn't. They gave him the 14-second one, and now his high-level teams aren't impacted at all, similar to like what you're saying about Changli. All it does is it introduces lower levels of play being more viable. And if that's the approach that they took, I'm just theory crafting here, right? We'll never really know. If that's the approach that they took, I think it makes a ton of sense, and I'm glad they did it.
I 100% agree. I think that outro buffs should be, like, honestly, as long as they want to be. Because obviously every damage character will have a downtime at some point.
Exactly.
So having the outer buff pretty much be indefinite till you swap out is like, it doesn't really matter.
Because you'll need to reset your rotation and get the buffs on like your supports back.
Yeah, exactly. You're kind of forced into swapping them out eventually anyway. So the timer is not really important in my personal opinion.
Absolutely, yeah.
Maybe Kuro is thinking of something, or maybe there will be a future character where that will matter, but I don't know. For now, I cannot say that there's any reason to keep it at 10 seconds or even like at any time really, because I think a character should really keep the buff as long as they're on field, and I don't think there's any problem with it because any good rotation will require you to swap out because you will lose buffs eventually.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think it's safe just keep it at 14 because every other buff in the game and every other rotation in the game is kind of like 15 seconds max, except for Camellia. Like for some reason, hers just long as shit. So like Camellia is like the only like standout over here, but she's kind of known for it. And then you have like stuff like Rejuvenating Glow is 30, which is like fine because it's the first buff that's applied. Moonlit Clouds is 15, both with the Heron as well. So it's kind of like I think they just view it as, I think they just put in 14 to make it so that people had like more of a baseline for when to swap. And with the bar at the bottom, right, it's kind of like a sign that like, hey, you should probably get off this fucking character because you're losing DPS. I think that the point that you brought up about it being 10 is just like, at this point, I think you've mentioned, right, that Changli's outro buff being 14 seconds wouldn't even make her stronger in her top performing teams. I'm gonna be real. I think I agree with you completely. And I also think that Lumi and Changli's buffs should just be buffed. I think that they should just add the 4 seconds back. I don't think it's going to improve their actual strength ceiling. It's just going to raise the floor of her other teams. And I'm going to be real, I don't really see a problem with that. Because it's not like any of those new teams that are going to get the floor raised are going to like absolutely like blow the existing ones out of the water. It just adds more viability to different members of the roster. What's your take on that?
I 100% agree. I don't think there's any downside to doing that. I think you could like even add the timer to Changli right now, and all it would do really is it would buff people that are really new to the game, that think that rotations are actually just going 1 to 3, like support Changli and then whoever her main DPS is. And these people would actually have a better experience playing the game, to be completely honest. Just go through like Genshin, like 1 to 3 rotations, where they just go through each character and then they spend the whole 14 seconds, let's assume 14 seconds here, and they will do just more damage and it will just be better for them. So there's no downside, but then we also have to like talk about, okay, which characters do we buff? And like, you know, if we buff this one character, what about that other character? So one thing I really liked about 2.0 is that they actually buffed Spectre Rover. Spectre Rover being now a viable character and actually incredibly strong at the high level. He does incredible amounts of damage, really like competitive sub DPS if you actually get to hit everything. So I think that was a great change, and I honestly hope that in the future Kuro will not dismiss the opportunity to actually buff other characters as well, because like you already said, like adding a 14-second timer to the outros literally hurts no one. It just buffs people that don't spend as much time learning the game.
Absolutely. It makes the game and the character more accessible with no with no hidden sort of improvements to people that are already sweating the shit out of her.
Exactly. And I think there's a lot of other ways as well to buff, well, less relevant characters on the roster. Lumi is a great example. Despite Lumi, you know, everyone looked at her resonant skill damage amplifier and thought, well, this is gonna be great with like a bunch of characters. But it turned out that Lumi is really weak. Her Concerto is horrible and her rotation is incredibly long, so she doesn't really find a use anywhere. So I hope Kuro eventually does something to make her stronger.
And I think the first step to that is just making her outro skill not complete dog shit for some, like it's just bad. And like everyone was talking about how they wanted to use her to buff Carlotta, and that team is just, it's a straight DPS loss. Like Tao Chi's actually better. It's insane. Like maybe Lumi might actually no. The lack of damage amp on her skill or her forte is just, it kills her. Yeah, like Tao Chi is like better. That's the craziest part. Is she's better than Lumi in the fucking team. It almost doesn't make sense. Yeah, I'm glad that we're on the same page when it comes to some of these more like retroactive things, ways to just like, because I'm all about, I've just seen so many people who have quit the game in 1.1 or 1.2, and a lot of them, they're 5 stars that they have, it's like Yinlin, Jinxie, and Changli. They maybe have Jinxie, they maybe have Jian. I feel like there is just a wide abundance of players who, unfortunately, because they didn't know what they were getting themselves into when it came to a character like Changli, they kind of like quit the game or they fell off the wagon because they didn't get the performance or like the sort of like the output that they were expecting. And then other players were, but to get that output that you wanted from like a 5-star limited unit, the expenditure or the investment was absolutely huge on like the rotation side, on like the input side, on like the skill side. And so I would view this change to like the outro skill for going from 10 to 14 as a way to like bridge that gap between players, where you don't have to play her like an absolute freak to just get her like, you know, functional in some of the teams. And you can just use her as like a buffer instead for like your Encore, your Chisha, your Changli Yao. And it actually feels like a better, like it actually feels like a sub DPS as well, because we've already sort of peeled back the curtain with Brant, where he can do the same exact sort of role as Changli. He can play as a hyper carry, that's something that Changli can't do. And then Brant just has a full-fledged 14 fucking second outro skill. It's the same exact thing that other sub DPSs are getting. And it's just like, man, I would love for the game to just get more accessible, to get more player friendly, especially for new ones, because those are the people right now that are probably going to be pulling Changli.
Absolutely, I 100% agree. And on top of that, I just want to bring up something. Oh my god, like all the new 4-star characters, two new 4-star characters.
Dog shit,
we
right?
didn't get any. They're both complete dog shit. Like the mere fact that Lumi, who has actually such a good design, right, is actually worse than fucking Tauchi, the worst 4-star in the entire fucking game, is unbelievable to me. Like how do you release a character that's actually worse than the worst 4-star character in the game? Like, how is it possible?
Impressive.
You advertise this character. She's literally in your trailers, not like some random nobody like Tauchi who has like 5 seconds in the story and that's literally it. Like, she is an advertised character that a lot of people are looking forward to. Now, a lot of people literally pull. She was on Yinlin's banner. Now, a lot of people might not want Yinlin, so they pull on this banner, get Lumi, and just to be disappointed that she's worse than the character they probably already unfortunately got while pulling for another character. That's kind of sad. So please, Kuro, please give us more 4-stars and actually good ones. This is a very, very sad state for the game when it comes to 4-stars.
I'm a little bit, there's something I've been a little bit concerned about when it comes to the 4-star roster, and you could in some ways consider this like doom posting. I do feel like we're running into a bit of like a Genshin 1.0 trap with some of the 4-stars, where it's very clear that there are some exceptionally, absurdly good 4-star characters that have been here since launch. The characters that I have in mind when it comes to who's absurdly good is it's going to be the Sanhua and the Mortifi. Those are the main ones that come to mind for me. I'm not sure if you had any others that you were thinking about, but the Sanhua and the Mortifi to me just seem absolutely kind of fucking nuts. And I feel like they're kind of like in a situation where they've set the ceiling for a 4-star character's strength, and if other 4-star characters don't release with like a similar power level, people are just gonna think they're dog shit. And I'm not saying that it's like Yohu and Lumi are like just dog shit because they're not as strong as Sanhua and Mortifi. Lumi and Yohu are just dog shit because they're fucking bad. Right? They don't even perform at the same level as like, like a Dan Jin or like a Yang Yang. They're just way worse. Do you think like the way that Mortifi and Sanhua have been sort of like dominating in a lot of different ways, like how they have so many of these strengths, like do you see that being a problem for that 4-star design?
Ooh, that's a good question, honestly. I don't think like certain 4-stars being good ties Kuro's hands from making other good characters. Obviously, people are gonna compare. Let's say you're a new player, you go to Pride and you literally see Sanhua above like 7 different limited like characters, or even more, honestly. You're just like, what the fuck? Like, are 4-stars really that strong? And well, obviously it's S6 Sanhua. Like, that's something that you probably got to take into consideration. But still, I don't think Sanhua is a problem for the game. I think Sanhua is exactly what the game needs. I think characters that are kind of like Sanhua are a great addition to the game, so they're more free-to-play accessible because you can get them. And you'll S6 them over time anyway.
Absolutely.
They are a huge benefit to your account. I mean, Sanhua is even free, if I remember correctly.
1 copy of her is free from the beginner event. That never expires, that everybody has.
Yeah, exactly. So Sanhua is amazing. I think Sanhua might even be a reason why a lot of people stuck around for Wuthering Waves, because she's super fun to play. She like elevates your account immensely. She's just like great overall. And I think Kuro should just make more 4-stars. It will not have a dramatic impact on their revenue, because most people, like, it might even encourage people more to pull on banners rather than less, because they might want the 4-star on top of the 5-star. Like, it increases their revenue, in my personal opinion.
I get what you're saying. I do have a counterpoint though. I think it's
Yeah,
fair
sure.
to say that a lot of players, because of how strong and how powerful Sanhua is, they didn't find a particularly large amount of value in pulling a Rosia. Do you think that's a fair take as well? You know, their sort of like premium sub DPS where it's like Sanhua will do like, you know, get like 90 to 95% of what Rosia does. Sometimes better than Rosia in like certain situations.
That's a good point, but I would dare to say that I think they could have just made Roshia like a little bit better
True.
than Sanwa. I don't think it would have broken the game or hurt anyone greatly, because Sanwa still has her Sanwa specific strengths, which are extremely fast concerto. She has like time freeze mechanics, like delay concerto mechanics. Like, there's so many things about Sanwa that just make her amazing. Roshia, like, she's really strong, but she's just nowhere near as fast as Sanwa by any means. No matter what you do with Roshia, she will never be as fast as Sanwa. So I think they could have just made Roshia like just stronger, and I don't think it would have broken the game in any way.
Yeah,
I think that would have been completely fair.
She just does one bounce based off her Forte circuit stacks, and like the more Forte circuit stacks she has, the bigger AoE and the bigger damage the bounce is, and the more concerto. And then she only has to do one bounce in her rotation, and then her liberation, and then she's full concerto. Maybe that would have been like something better for her to like reduce her field time. But, you know, obviously she's already been made. You know, she does have like some advantage, I guess. It like she's much better in multi-wave with the 3 bounces. Having one big bounce would have made her worse. And so she does have some clear advantages in pincer, which is definitely fair with her extended field time. I do think the extended field time actually helps her out in pincer a little bit, because she can like bounce through multiple waves. So I'm glad that they're adding some of like the trade-offs to her kit, and it's becoming more apparent now that more of the endgame modes are here.
What I think is like a great aspect for Kuro Games' character design philosophy is that I really like when they make characters that have different strengths.
Exactly.
For example, Carlotta, like, she just does absolutely crazy amounts of damage. But if we look at the highest levels of play, we see that Jinshi will pull ahead of Carlotta because her damage is so unbelievably concentrated in her Dragon Laser nukes that she can just literally crit fish for like 2 or even 3 crits, and she will just outdo Carlotta, who needs like a lot more consistent critting to reach like the best times possible. So I really like when Kuro Games doesn't just power creep a character or doesn't make an underwhelming character, but just makes characters that have different strengths for different challenges in the game. Like, now we have TOA and WuWa. In WuWa, Gian is fucking godly. In TOA, Gian is still pretty decent. He's good, but he's nothing like too crazy, nothing too amazing like Carlotta, for example. So I think if Kuro Games just adds more game modes that just test the character's strengths on different levels, it will both give them more revenue, because people will feel more enticed to pull for characters that have these strengths for each game mode, while also making characters viable and desirable in multiple ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Just more game modes, more different use cases for characters. Maybe we'll have a game mode in the future that actually uses John Shin's fucking... You know what she fucking does? Like, you know, she's doing that shit for like 20 seconds to get her shield.
Yeah.
Like, maybe one day we'll have a use case for her. We just have to see.
I doubt Junction will ever be useful, but maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe there'll be a game mode where you just need to survive, and that huge shield might just come in handy.
Yeah, well, Brant's gonna be really good in that one as well. So we'll see. We'll see if they... I mean, there's clearly like a little bit of like survival-oriented stuff in the holograms, but definitely not at the level of like, you know, taking constant damage and something like that. So we'll just have to see. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna be honest. I feel like we brought up a lot of different points. We brought up a lot of potentially controversial topics, but I feel like we've kind of just agreed on everything. And so what I want to do is, obviously, right, you're like on my stream, you're like reading my chat, you're getting their input, and I just want to make sure you don't feel like you have to be like pressured into like agreeing with me. And so I guess like looking back on the entire conversation, right, I got some of my notes over here. You played Brant a lot, you realize the character's fucking cracked, the outro isn't a selling point, Changli probably could get a buff over to 14 seconds. Kuro really needs to work on their 4-star design. They shouldn't be scared of making crazy good 4-stars, because that's going to promote sales. And as long as they have more of the game modes, they'll be able to, you know, accentuate and highlight the strengths of different kits and still keep the sales up. Is that sort of like a good summary of the conversation so far?
I think that's pretty much all the points I made, and no, I will not feel pressure to agree with you. Actually, I'm a fairly disagreeable person. I like really being honest. I like conversation. I like disagreements, and I like logical discussion. Where both parties of the discussion can learn something and adjust their views and maybe come to a middle ground where they both agree. So that's my opinion on pretty much all these takes.
Awesome.
At first, to be honest, like I want to be honest with you, like when I first like found out about your channel, I only saw the thumbnails, and I'm not really like a person that watches like all content. I see thumbnails off. I just saw, well, WuWa ruined this ruined that. Like Genshin is like the worst company, you know, whatever. Like all this stuff, and I didn't really bother watching the videos. So at first, I thought like, you know, your content is just like, well, just overly critical or clickbaity or whatever you want to call it. But you know, now that I actually talk to you and actually see your takes on like multiple things, I think if I do see your content as like casual oriented, like new player oriented, and not like for the top 10%, but for the 90% of the people that also play the game, that don't really maximize, that don't really do like quick sum and stuff, I think you actually fairly well represent what these people feel and think about the game, actually. Because like, for example, the Changli take, which you got a lot of flack for, and you know, in my private DMs, I also criticized what you said about her, but you know, looking back at it, I think it's a fair point to make, because let's be real here. If you're actually a new player, like you already said yourself, if you like, you know, if you press Changli and you just wait there for 2 seconds until she lands with her skill, do your slash, you just do no damage. Like you actually just do no damage. So like, how can I blame you for saying that? Now, the only real criticism I have is that I stand more for a diversified perspective. So if you say a statement like that, I would prefer it personally if you also clarify, if you invest a lot of time into it and learn the character, she will be amazing.
I do that every time. I'm just like,
Okay.
if you sweat your balls off, you play this character like a full-time job. Obviously, that's a bit of an over-exaggeration. You put a lot of hours into learning this character and all her optimizations. I have said from the start, she will fucking perform. But holy shit, for a gacha game with an audience that's likely to be giga casual, I can't blame the guy that just spent 8 hours at work, wants to just come home and enjoy a game, if they're, you know, not very happy with the way that their Changli is performing. Because they're not going ahead, they're not playing super sweaty. Maybe they're on fucking mobile, and they're just like, holy shit, this character's a nightmare.
I fully agree. I mean, when I first played Changli, it took me many hours to really learn how she plays and like to do the swaps correctly. So I fully understand that most people will not feel very rewarded pulling her if they just directly compare her damage to the previously released character, which is Jinshi. And Jinshi, oh my god, like if you play Jinshi at skill 4 versus Changli at skill 4,
it's like Moses parting the Red Sea.
Comparable.
Yeah, it's absolutely fucking insane. Like, you could honestly play Jinshi like one-handed, and I'm 100% sure you'll like out damage your Changli team if you're Giga casual. 1,000,000%.
100%.
Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I'll take that critique. You know, I'm glad that you've I guess you've turned the ship around in terms of your professional opinion. Obviously, right? You know, part of the YouTube game is having, you know, some intriguing thumbnails that are gonna provoke a question in the mind of your viewers and get them to click on your video to see if that question gets answered. I think that's definitely something that every CC is going to have to like keep in mind as they move forward and they design content around their channel. Obviously, you can give me the critique that I should do less of it, or at least be a little bit more clear in what I am trying to intrigue viewers about. Perfectly fine, right? But I'm glad that you've taken the time to actually, you know, figure out what my takes actually are, what my viewpoint is on the entire matter. And let's be honest here, right? At most Changli players that like play at a high level that I've talked to and explained the situation, or at least explained my viewpoint, they tend to agree with me, right? Because they would know firsthand just how much fucking work was required for them to get to that high level with the character. And boy, oh boy, it's a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't really agree with like the ultimate like elitist perspectives, kind of, where like let's say the top 5% of the players are like, yeah, but like my Changli like clears in like 30 seconds, so like obviously Changli is like a tier 0 character.
She's tier 0 for everybody.
She is tier 0 for that specific player. And I think like if I just, because I'm also like a top 1% player, so I have to kind of turn off the thought that like my perspective is not really what applies to most people. So if I actually get out of that mindset and just put myself into like your shoes and like the average player's shoes, then I can definitely come to agree that, if your goal is to represent the feelings and thoughts of for the average player base, then I think you're doing a fairly good job. Well, I will not say that I agree with truly every single take you make, but
Nobody
I
can.
will say that I think most takes are fairly reasonable. And I think if you're open to adjusting and learning, then absolutely I fully support whatever you make. Well, the thumbnails are a different question, but like obviously content creation kind of puts you in a dilemma where you have to make a decision between making a thumbnail that's accurate as well as click worthy. And that's like one of the things that I struggle with the most because
It's a very hard thing to blend. And I feel like
it's incredibly hard.
it's something that content creators themselves, or you won't really figure out just how hard it is to like find that perfect blend until you actually, start making your own videos and start like uploading your own content, seeing what like various CTRs are. You're like, wow, I worked so hard on this video and it just bombed because I had a bad thumbnail and I had a bad title. Right? It's just a learning experience from that point of view. And yeah, it can be a little bit rough sometimes, 1,000,000%. I will say though, Selkey, when it comes to like your content and kind of like the approach that you have, I would think about like putting yourself in the shoes of like that more casual player or kind of like the audience that I'm looking to mainly address with my content, doing that more often, right? Because let's be real here. That's the majority of the player base. Right? It's going to be those individuals. Yes. And kind of like, I think that you have a lot of potential as a bit more of like a stepping stone in this sort of like situation to where players that are maybe casual right now and are looking to level up, just like really small optimizations, like really small things that like somebody can watch for like 3 to 4 minutes or maybe like 8, right? If you're looking to get the most profitable videos possible, something that they can like legitimately learn and pick up in 8 minutes and then like doing a lot of content focused on that, right? And the best way for you to know if that's actually good is to like see if you can like teach some people that are maybe not knowing of these mechanics, like do some streams where you like teach some casual viewers how to like do stuff like straight up, right? And then maybe you could even turn that into a video, or that becomes a practice for you to figure out how to like package like these learning things for like players into a video. And I think that would be a really cool sort of like content avenue if you wanted to get into that.
So I actually had like a lot of thoughts regarding this because sometimes I admittingly feel a little bit, I don't want to call it trap because that sounds a little bit too pigeonholed. Yeah, I feel a little bit pigeonholed into making pretty much, guide specific content only, because I do think there's a lot of opinions and thoughts I have regarding WuWa, pretty much just like you, that I would like to talk about, make longer videos about, like video essays or whatever, really. I don't really want to start drama because I don't think drama is really productive. I would more like kind of podcasts and discussions. I've been kind of wondering like how I might transform my content to other things that aren't just guides and specific like, texts and stuff, which I know a lot of people watch me for, and that's completely fair. I still want to keep making that content, but I don't want that to be like all my content. And I kind of want to branch out also a little bit, just get into the content creation sphere, get into contact with other content creators, just do some more fun stuff, because I feel like sometimes in my videos I appear a little bit very serious, very like on the point, like I don't want to waste any time, like I don't really rip many jokes. And I think I want people to also just know about me, like I'm not really that serious of a person. Like I'm actually fairly easygoing. I'm very tolerant to a lot of different opinions, and I kind of want that to shine a little bit more in both my videos as well as my streams. So I would like people to know, hey, like you're not just the person we go to for guys. We're also the person we just like hanging with you and like, enjoying your jokes, your whatever you do. Like, and I think that would be cool. Like just putting my personality more on display.
Yeah. So this is how I know I think you'll be relatively successful if that's the path that you take. My viewer count has either been like static or rising as we've been having this conversation, right? And when we're having this conversation, it's basically just the two of us talking to each other. That's like all we're fucking doing right now. And that is interesting enough to retain my viewers and then also grow it at the same time. And so that gives me at least some faith, or I think it should give you some faith, that this type of content, this sort of thing that's going on, you know, where it's just like, you know, you are expressing a lot of your personality over here. You're expressing a lot of like your personal hot takes. That is something that people are at least interested in seeing, and they're interested in staying for. And so the way that I view it is, I think there's a lot of potential here. I've personally enjoyed this conversation a lot. And I'm going to be honest, I think that this would be maybe a cool thing to regularly do, where we have more, right, of these sweaty, you know, sweaty TCs, these sweaty players, right, on a sort of like, maybe like what you mentioned, right, like a podcast like this, maybe something that I can organize, host it on my channel, and then we can have, you know, maybe like, you know, 3, 4, 5 people that, you know, make similar types of content as you, and we can get more of like this personality thing out, because I feel like not a lot of people know about me, right? Like, people know about like my personality, how I think about things, like my takes. I feel like they don't know a lot about you guys, because you're more like official most of the time, right? You're talking about like very mechanical things, and there's not a lot of room for like that personality to come out, like you've been saying.
Actually, one funny realization I had while making videos is I set myself a rule that I don't want to waste people's time, which, you know, is a very vague statement. What does wasting time even imply?
True.
And what I tried to focus on was efficiency. I tried to make my videos as concise as possible, as informative as possible, in the shortest amount of time without being inaccurate or wrong. But what I realized that kind of prisoned me into, well, if I am so time efficient, then there is also no time for my personality to come through. I can't actually show who I am or what I really think about the game. I'm just there to provide information the quickest way, like it's Wikipedia, which I think as a content creator is not really the best move to make.
That's not that great, right? Because you want to get into like the whole thing, and I think there's been somebody talking about it. I think TJ Kwan has been bringing it up a lot in chat about like how variety can kill your channel. TJ, let me be honest with you. I started off more focused on like guides. Like, some of my like most popular original videos way back in the day was me making farming routes for fucking echoes, like showing people where to go on the map to farm certain like echo sets more efficiently. There's no personality there, right? There's no actual like driving like viewership through like who you are. And then I transitioned into like more variety, into like talking about things, into like, you know, going over different topical areas and just giving my takes on stuff. And so I don't think that Selkey, I'm gonna be honest here, right? And please don't take this as an insult. I'm gonna like.
Don't worry about it. You can just say it. If I'll correct you if you say something.
You don't have like a fuck ton of viewers, right? Like somebody like WuWa does, or a fuck ton of subs that just know.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I started like 3 months ago, which is when I started taking like content creation seriously, and I haven't really like truly 1000% taken it seriously even till today. But I do want to grow my channel. I do want to grow my audience. And yeah, I think a good point to make is that at this point in my, if you want to assume it, a career, it's probably the best idea that I start as early as I can switching things up rather than later, because, you know, the later I do it, the more people are used to a certain specific style. And I think if I switch it up now and show more, like we already discussed, my personality and what else I can do with my audience, that they will adjust to this much quicker, which can also lead to, you know, me getting more of an audience in, which isn't just very high level oriented.
Yeah, and I think the last thing that I'm gonna say in regards to like some of the content stuff is start pumping out some 8-minute videos, man. It'll be better for like your your retention and stuff. I'm gonna be honest here. I feel like 8 to 10 minutes is sort of something. It gives you enough time. I think you have to get this idea of sort of like efficiency, like a little bit, like maybe tone it down a little bit, because there's ways to weave in the personality in a way that doesn't interfere with the content, that is just like a good joke, a good laugh. You know, I think you do have a sense of humor. I think that there's a lot of potential to like let it show with maybe like a witty phrase or two. And people, right, their time won't feel like it's wasted if they enjoyed watching your video. And people can enjoy, they can enjoy watching your video without you being as efficient as possible. 1,000,000%.
That's also the conclusion that I came to. And in my latest videos, like in my last 4 videos, it's also a little bit more visible that I'm trying to get some jokes in there in between and try to let people see that I'm not taking it super seriously, but I still want people to learn while watching my content. But yeah, I 100% agree that I should, make longer videos that are both entertaining as well as informative, so people can get to know me and enjoy my content more, so they don't feel like their time is wasted. Because I'll admit, just having this like very bland just information like run down is boring to watch. It really is.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, man, delete or like unlist all of your videos prior to the Jinsei. Like you might see it on here. You see, you have your Jinsei's fastest opener showcase. Just unlist all your videos prior to that, man. Like, there's so much, like, there's like, what is this? Like, I think less of you now that I think less of you as a person after seeing this Jungle Lulu guide. Like, what the fuck is wrong with
I
you?
was playing League for 9 years, man. Give me a break.
Hey, same here, man. But what the fuck is
Really?
this? I feel
Really?
like there are people that have unsubbed because they saw this Jungle Lulu guide, and you're like, wow, this is one of those terrorists ruining my fucking game. Like, I'm gonna get him back for this.
Hey, I mean, I was Diamond too, so with
I was
jungle, so.
I was Masters. I was a Masters.
You were? Holy
I was a
shit.
Masters Cassante, man. Recently. I'm not even joking. I was.
Okay.
Okay, I was Diamond
I
1,
see.
98 LP.
Fair enough.
That's
We'll take it,
Masters. That's
We'll take it. Don't worry.
basically Masters. I was 1 win away, right? And then I got griefed by, I think it was probably a Lulu jungle that griefed me, if I'm frankly being honest.
Very likely. I mean, if I knew you were queuing up, I would hop on League immediately just to snipe your ass.
This fucking guy. All right. Well, I have enjoyed this chat. I'm gonna be honest. I think that chat enjoyed this chat as well. I would love to do this sometime again in the future. You know, we could like shoot the shit, talk about the meta, talk about the teams. I'm happy to use my channel as like a starting board or launch pad for it. If you think there are any people that would love to have a conversation like this where, you know, we kind of just like, we brought it up because we're talking about Brant and his potential, right? If you ever feel like there are people that would want to like be involved in something like this, we do a bit of like a round robin. We get pretty technical with it. I do think that obviously, I don't make a lot of content geared around like super sweaty high level stuff, but I hope I've displayed that I understand everything that's going on. I just choose not to make that content.
Yeah, that's completely fair.
Yeah. I understand like the entire conversation over here. I think that, you know, if we want to have like a discussion, bring some more TCs or other CCs in, and then kind of like go from there. I think that this could be a fun recurring thing for us to do.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I already know one person that would probably hop on, which is Sweat.
Mm-hmm.
You probably already talked to him.
Of course, yeah.
I talked to him privately as well. I literally coined some of the decisions that are on Pride. When, for example, the Mortefi change, I would dare to say that I had a fairly large influence on moving him up to tier 0.5.
Good shit.
Because I was the person that pretty much said, yeah, this unit is fucking cracked. Like, really is for
do you use the Empire Arena on him?
I do.
Yeah, he does a lot of damage. Like, it's kind of disgusting how much damage he does.
Agreed. He is incredibly strong, great buffs, easy to play. There's nothing wrong with the unit, and I think that he's placed over some of the limited 5-star characters is completely fair. He's a great unit.
Yeah, I mean, hey, we could talk about the latest fucking changes on like the Pride Win tier list, or maybe even have like a preview of the changes too, and make that part of the podcast as well.
That is actually a great idea. I 100% agree, because I think like if we would group review tier list changes, I think that would enrich the experience and the perspective on what is actually happening exponentially. Like, I think it's so good.
Everyone give him a like and a follow if you can. Any last things you want to get off of your chest, I guess?
Saint Tontas ruined Selkey.